Hi, I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker today, Stephen Dotson. He is the Sustainability Coordinator for the town of Brattleboro. He joined just before everything shut down for COVID. He's the right person in the job, in my opinion, right now. I'm really very glad he joined us. I had some small part in advocating for the creation of this position. I had definite ideas as to what this position could entail, and I had low expectations of finding an individual who could encompass all of that. With Stephen's experience and uh, uh, um, operations, corporate sustainability, strategy, his general attitude of realizing that it's not one person that gets things done, it's many. I think he's a great person to be for the town of Brattleboro at this time. With no further ado, I'll pass it over to him, and you can ask him more questions about what it's like living in Putney without broadband.
Thanks, Tom. And I just want to appreciate Tom. He's being a bit modest. He went into the trenches to design and identify the town goals that this position should pursue. So he was formative in ensuring that this happened. And for those who don't have the kind of larger arc and story there, my position came into existence in a very unusual way at the demand at town meeting, upon which $100,000 was added to the budget for all the benefits and salary. They crafted the position last December, and I started at the beginning of February. All along the way, there's been this question of, well, what will this mean? The town, as a staff community, didn't ask necessarily for this position, so it's interesting to come into a group that wasn't anticipating you. And in the meantime, the community has many varying needs for addressing sustainability. So I'd like to just give you a bit of a presentation that encapsulates what I've done in these first 8 months and explains a bit more about how I'm trying to approach all the work that we have to do here and how it leverages community groups like Rotary and so many others, especially in the midst of a pandemic. My banner headline that I would say, though, is that when we're talking about sustainability now in the context of COVID, we're now aware that we're talking about disruption at large. We're not just talking about environmental concerns. We're talking about trying to maintain a quality of life for everyone in the community and for as long as possible. So if I could, I'm going to move into a screen share of a bit of a presentation. And I'm happy to take questions at the end, but also if there's something extremely topical, don't hesitate to jump in. Let's see if I can get this going. All right, can you all see that? Let's see. Okay, I can't see you more, so can someone give me a thumbs up if you
We
can
can
see my
see your
screen?
screen.
Great. So just defining sustainability is a great starting point, right? And I kind of mentioned the working definition that I've come to use. Sustainability means Brattleboro becomes more livable for longer for everyone. And I have my own 3 R's around resilience, regeneration, and relocalization that I've been playing with here. And that gets into the how do we build that sustainability. We build more resilient, regenerative relationships. And the opposite of sustainability is clearly the disruptions and upheaval of our quality of life as we've experienced these last 6 months. My work is not to bring a comprehensive vision from the mountaintop of what sustainability is. My job is to work as a servant leader to the community and build consensus around what a better Brattleboro means for everyone. So a lot of organizing, a lot of outreach, a lot of education is implicit in what I do. And that's part of my background too. I come at this from a background doing community organizing in the Quaker community, in the environmental community, and then working for a huge array of nonprofits in Brattleboro, from Rich Earth Institute to Retreat Farm. I saw Roger Albee on the call. Roger knows me from my work with Strolling and the Slow Living Summit. And I've also worked with Brattleboro Savings and Loan to make them a B Corp. So the town had a choice in the end in the finalists between someone from an experienced sustainability office who wasn't based in Brattleboro, would have to move here, and start the whole process of understanding our community. They opted for me, the guy who maybe doesn't have as much experience in that traditional sense, but who has that community network. And that's really paid off over this COVID era. So just back to these 3 R's: resilience, regeneration, relocalization. Resilience is important because it focuses on addressing our biggest vulnerabilities, and that can include the vulnerabilities in our social systems, in our most vulnerable people in our community. So in a way, it brings in equity from the beginning as we start to talk about sustainability. It also avoids the question of whether or not there's a crisis to be dealt with, or why is there a crisis to be dealt with. We don't need to debate climate change and other things as to whether or not threat of disruption is real. It's real. How do we prepare for it? We need resilience. And the 3rd R is where I've come to believe smaller communities like ours have some of the biggest potential to impact our long-term sustainability. Relocalization has economic benefits, has environmental benefits. And throughout COVID, we've seen that when other systems fail, we only have each other to turn to. And I love this concept of service over self. I was going through the Rotary website and seeing, Rotary makes help happen. And that's really what I think we need to realize, is that locally we have a kind of power that we haven't had to utilize because we've had a lot of convenience. And so it's time that we rethink kind of these local systems that we have the ability to impact, to find co-benefits, to build this larger sense of sustainability. Realizing I skip regeneration. My point with regeneration is that if we were to sustain the status quo, we know that we will not enjoy that quality of life that we do right now in the future. The status quo is itself unsustainable. So as we build new systems, we have to think about how they need to not be extractive. They need to not be pulling equity out of our community, or natural resources out of our community. They need to be regenerative. So these are frames by which I think we'll find a lot of traction and empowerment, and be able to build towards this vision of a maintained and improved quality of life. So I'm one guy, I'm a coordinator, and there was discussion in forming my position about, well, is it a director, is it an officer? And it's very clearly a coordinator, because I have a mandate to collaborate. If I took on any one project, it would overwhelm most of my time. There's core issues around the town's use of energy, conserving lands, and the rest that is central to my work. But half of it is this balance between what I call the big T town, which is the organization, town of Brattleboro, and the smaller T town, or the wider community, the geographic footprint of Brattleboro. I work on the inside of town with all the committees and the departments and the commissions. I work outside of the town government with the nonprofit community groups, different visionary leaders, people bringing forth ideas and projects that maybe haven't taken the right shape to know how to be digested by the town. And so I'm there to help them bridge, be a catalyst, be connective tissue, help them find the resources they need to develop those potential projects, and fill in to be a last gap to make things happen. Excuse me for 1 second. I'm just going to take a sip of tea. So as I mentioned, I'm on the leadership team. So I sit down with the heads of all the departments weekly and stay in tune with what they're doing. And I've been going through each department and doing the kind of auditing for cost savings and other environmental improvements. And I staff a number of committees, including Energy Committee. We've recently restarted the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which is a big move in my mind to support our farms and our regional food system. And I plug in, of course, to all sorts of other aspects of the town's work. So it's very broad how they wrote the position. I'm in charge of everything from trying to address the opioid crisis, trying to address the housing shortage, even trying to stop light pollution. So there's a lot of ground to cover. So a bit of what I've been trying to do is set expectations for people and when they hear from me and how to track this kind of work. There are monthly reports that go out with the select board materials. And just a week ago, I gave a report similar to this one to the select board. And that is something we intend to do annually in the fall. So if you're curious what I'm up to, you can expect to hear about it then. Long term, the trajectory is that I work myself out of a job. I managed to successfully integrate sustainability into all aspects of town government, and we take on a longer range planning approach that incorporates these kinds of values. If sustainability stays siloed in its own place, it's probably going to spin wheels. It will do some things, but it won't. One other thing I'll just point out from this slide, this winter, we're hoping to get out, and I'll try and share this with you all, a community survey to further hone and refine what priorities people in the community hold around sustainability. And that will be something that I take and reflect on with the committees and commissions in town and try and work into their agendas as the year progresses. So what's happened up till now? February 4th was my first day, and by March 5th, the town was giving trainings on how to properly use PPE and create a safe workplace. And my priorities shifted pretty dramatically to respond to the emergent needs within the community. So um, I can summarize it in big, bold buckets of public health, um, community connection and response, having a neighborhood level response, food insecurity, mental health resilience, trails, outdoor activity, gathering spaces outdoors, trying to facilitate that, doing whatever I can to ensure that school happens as it's opened up this fall, and then ongoing work with the Energy Committee, which has really become rejuvenated through the process of COVID. So I'll start by picking on my coworker. That's Steve Barrett. If you all don't know him, he's the director of Public Works. As soon as it became evident that we all needed masks, I noticed online that there's a tremendous community effort springing up among the sewers and the quilters of Southern Vermont to sew masks at scale for frontline workplaces. So for the first half of April, I was in a sprint, really just enabling these folks to stay in lockdown, but obtain all the materials they need. We set up depots and town centers all across Windham County where people could pick up all the materials. We were, trading sewing machines across the county. We were processing everything through a back end of spreadsheets and online portals. The folks here made 16,000 masks for frontline workplaces, which was all led by a woman named Jen Batty. And I just played minimal structural support in the background to enable them to work at scale. This also wouldn't have been possible without huge amounts of donated fabric from various businesses. Full Flex was donating 10-pound boxes of elastic to anybody who would be donating masks that they sew. It was a tremendous community response. And Jen Batty is someone I just want to lift up. They've now kind of sunsetted this group for the time being. It seems our max has all the same. It shows you what you can do. I will point out in the right side of the picture, I think the most Vermont moment of this for me was the fact I didn't have a yardstick. So we were forced to measure and cut fabric using a downhill ski. So that was trying to stay true to the Vermont way. Soon after masks were underway, I switched over to working on ensuring that we maintain an ability to stay connected even though we're in lockdown on a neighborhood level. And there was tremendous organizing through the mutual aid networks that sprung up, working with the United Way, working with Groundworks and Foodworks. And then on a larger scale, the Regional Commission did some heavy lifting to try and compile and create hubs of resources so people knew how to find what they needed in their own community throughout the process. And VCRD connected all these mutual aid groups and people who were part of the COVID response into a kind of statewide network to share best practices and tools. So again, it's easy to win when you have amazing teammates. And this is work that I really think we can build on. We'll need to have that kind of responsiveness and neighborhood reach in the future. I don't mean to be pessimistic, but at this point in time, there are countries in Europe shutting down again, and it's a big question as to whether we will go there or not as well. something for us to be prepared for as much as we ever can be. We all know that seed companies sold out of seeds early on in the pandemic, and everyone had nothing to do. They were all interested in gardening or baking bread. And so I gathered a group of food farm oriented nonprofits, and Roger was a part of this scheming. We called ourselves the Community Food Farm Action Team, or CFAT, which sent a right message in our minds. So we pooled together resources from Edible Brattleboro, Food Connects, Retreat Farm, Winston Prouty, Strolling. The Solid Waste Management District donated a bunch of their compost and fill to enable community gardens. And we tried to do everything we could to enable as many people to grow some of their own food this season. And it's not as though they would be able to grow enough to feed themselves, but it does give you a sense of security. And at a time when food insecurity quadrupled over the course of April to 44%, which is pretty unheard of. So this was both a mental health exercise, something for people to connect with one another over from a distance. And part of what we also were aware of is that we needed to keep in mind the racial equity issues that we're all kind of awakening to in a new way right now. And so on the back of the yard signs for this Growing Resilience gardening campaign, we worked with Rich Holshoe of the Abenaki to have this land acknowledgement language, which has since been borrowed by other organizations, and I'm sure we'll reuse again. So grateful for this effort, and I expect we'll do a similar gardening campaign next year with similar partners. Trails, everyone wanted to get outside and needed to cut loose. So I've been trying to strengthen and interconnect all the different trail systems in Brattleboro, and I've had the assistance of the National Park Service in doing so. They have a technical assistance grant that gives you 2 staff people to work with and tackle all the obstacles in the way of some of your goals. So to just explain what's on the screen here, on the far left, there is intention to set up a bikeable path that would connect the Delta and the Delta campus, Delta Business Campus, with the Winston Prouty campus. And there's actually an existing carriage road that it could enable that. So that means some people could bike from Guilford over into West Brat through those campuses without having to utilize some of those more tricky and dangerous roads. There's other efforts to solidify a trail around the Retreat Meadows and use that as an educational space to tell the story of the Abenaki part. And perhaps, excuse me, perhaps the biggest aspiration, which would be very transformative for the town, is to make a rail trail connector between the West River, where it comes into the Connecticut at the bridge, all the way down to Whetstone Station, where the Hinsdale Bridge is. There's groups that I've been working with on the Monadnock side who have built out rail trail that extends almost all the way to Keene with just a few key gaps. And if we were to connect this last piece to the West River Trail, it would mean that you could bike all the way from Newfane to Keene continuously on a bikeable trail and not the road. This would open up the waterfront for Brattleboro in a way that would change that narrative of being a mill town that used the river as its sewer for so long and built its back to the river. So this is the long shot, long developing aspiration, but one that we're very excited about, and USDA Rural Development has been encouraging us to keep moving towards. So all that is trying to build a more compact downtown center that's more traversable by everyone. And just the idea of having that kind of a rail trail at the end of a train line, being able to get off the train and jump right on the bike path, that's a pretty ideal vision in our mind. So our energy committee here in town has become pretty rabid about taking action in this moment. A lot of them were part of the response for COVID that went into all these other avenues kind of away from traditional energy work. But they're still working on a lot of nitty gritty within the town of consolidating our energy usage and reporting, but also bringing forth a proposal that matches what the state just passed in terms of the Global Warming Solutions Act. They'll be asking the town in, I believe, about a month. They'll be bringing this before the select board to commit to a proposal with specific years to meet specific targets that are the same as is what the state has set. In a sense, this is to put us in a position to say to the state, you've set these goals, we've aligned with them, now we should be receiving funds to help make it happen. But that's an important conversation that they're bringing forward, and I just wanted to flag that. They also have a new Facebook page in case you all are keen on staying up to date with their work. That's probably the best place to tap in at this moment. So just what's on the horizon? I have doubled the size of my staff. I have 2 people now in my office. I feel very lucky. I have an AmeriCorps service member who is a real asset and gem. He'll be helping me do a lot of trail assessment, a lot of following up on items in the energy audit for the town's buildings, and helping us pursue different creative ideas around how to support the local economy, which is what I'd like to dig in with you guys about a little bit at the end. One of the initial projects we had started before COVID was to establish a seed and tool library with Brooks Memorial Library. This would be a place where someone could come and check out a saw, a drill, anything they may need. The fact that the statistic I build this project around is that the typical hand drill, electric wireless drill, is only used 12 minutes its entire life, but everyone has one. And that's a lot of waste. That's a lot of embodied energy, and there's folks who can't even afford to get that one. So creating the sharing economy is part of that relocalization effort that I think we can make to support kind of the lowest resourced parts of our community in some ways. The trail work will continue. That's a long-term aspiration. It's clear that we need to redirect more coordination in this moment to our food and farm systems. I'm so grateful for all the tremendous work that Stroll has been able to do. And now we need to realize there's something of a vacuum here, which is crisis and opportunity. But that their leadership will be missed in some ways, and we need to be intentional about trying to make up for that and build a resilient, sovereign regional food system. So creative supports for the local economy. I have conversations with Stephanie Bonin pretty regularly in which we're spitballing ideas. We're exploring things as out there as the idea of a local currency. And this is being tried and to great success actually in Greenfield and Ashfield with a system they call the Common Good Credit. And I can pop a link to a video about it in the chat for you all in a minute here once I shut up. But it's really interesting the way in which some of these tools really help keep consumers' choices local, keep that equity local, and at the same time can enable investment in projects for broad community benefit. You know, concerns with school right now, I would say that we need to understand that school happening is a function of everything else being possible. And I've noticed perhaps this mismatch where school is trying to figure out how to have everyone come inside as the weather gets cold. And at the same time, in the community, it seems as though there's probably a lot of underutilized spaces, especially among businesses and nonprofits, because their traditional models don't work. And I've wondered if there was a way to find creative reuse of community spaces to help enable school to happen as winter comes. So that's one of those pieces that I'm pursuing with folks like the Chamber and the library and others. So I'll just come back to a bit of what I believe you guys were touching on in the spirit of service and in this moment that we're in. One of the things that I feel most strongly and clearly about is that the way we communicate with one another is central and fundamental to everything else that we want to do. I fell in love with this community because I felt like people were able to speak to one another across differences that usually got hung up in national narratives and media narratives and all the rest. that Brattleboro can have conversations between neighbors, not between political parties, more successfully than other places. And building on that and building on trust and building a vocabulary that we share to talk about these things, to me, that's the first most fundamental piece of what we have to focus on, is remembering our own unity and remembering how no matter what happens to divide us in this moment, tomorrow someone has to keep the wastewater flowing, the kids fed, and business running. And it's going to be the same people that we're in the debates with and get so amped up about on social media. So keeping a focus on building communication and building new relationships in the community is central for me. Relocalization is where I see there being shared interest and desire to move both in the environmental world and in the economic world. Just as one example for the relocalizing piece, the point I made to the select board was that our town, Brattleboro, is home to the largest food distribution company in North America. But our shelves ran dry, ran empty. We're home to Fullflex, who I mentioned, manufacturers of medical grade elastic for PPE. And yet we had not enough masks. And I live here in Putney, a block away from a toilet paper company. And I don't think I have to tell you about what happened there. So there's something being shown, not that these businesses are doing anything wrong, not to critique them, but to show that there's a model that doesn't serve us in key moments of disruption. And relocalizing gives us a resiliency there that builds on our businesses and their ability to hang on and our people's ability to weather these disruptions. So that one point, I think, is a really interesting one to explore with a lot of groups. So I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. And just finally, in terms of just having a common base of research to look at, where are there solutions that have multiple benefits across all these systems, social, economic, environmental. Project Drawdown is a tremendous piece of research. They ranked the 100 different steps or approaches that need to be taken to solve the carbon and climate crisis. But they've also shown the economic benefits that can be pursued and realized if those approaches are made. So it's looking at everything, and I think it can help create that shared vocabulary for us to really identify where we have power, where we have impact, and where we can share the benefit of whatever approach across all parts of our community. And like I said, it's insurance and it's insulation from disruption at large. When we address all these issues, we're not just addressing climate change, we're addressing resilience towards a future pandemic, towards a cyber attack, or other kinds of disruption. And that in of itself is a really important frame to move through as well. So I'm going to skip that last slide. It was just a little bit of a sample from that Project Drawdown book, but I'll send you a link. Drawdown.org is the website with all the research about what they've done there. So thank you for allowing me time to share a bit of what I've been up to and how I've been approaching this. And I really welcome some of your feedback. I feel lucky to have work at all in this moment, and even luckier to have work that feels so meaningful and gives me a reason to really be of service. And I stand on the shoulders of so many people in the community. I can't name all the different organizations I've had the pleasure to work with, but it's an easy community to do this work in when the energy is so readily available. So thank you, Rotarians. And I'd love to entertain any questions or feedback, and I have some ideas to pass by you too, if you're open to it. Stop my screen share now.
Great, we have a few minutes. Anybody have questions?
Marcy's raising his hand.
Yes, I have a question. Stephen, your first R was resilience. Are you familiar with Judith Rodden's The Resilience Dividend?
I am not. Tell me about it.
No, we don't have much time. But
Okay, I'll check it out.
take note, Judith Rodden, The Resilience Dividend. And if you like the book, certainly bring it to the attention of Peter Elwell, our town manager.
I will do so. Thank you.
Other questions?
Frank Rucker.
Frank?
Okay, thank you. Stephen, nice to hear your presentation. Thank you for the great work. I don't have so much a question as just let you know that I'm the business administrator with the local schools here in the Brattleboro region. And you certainly have a lot of partners with your work in the school system. I know, given all of the distractions that we've had to deal with, it's really been challenging to stay on on a kind of a focal point. But just a quick sort of summary in that the Brattleboro Union High School received an Energy Star rating back in 2013. It was one of the very few Vermont high schools, to get that essentially a LEED-based certification. And we have just a real champion at the high school, Robert Clark, who's maintained that really stellar record of Energy Star rating. In addition, just since I've been in the Brattleboro systems, which is not that long, only 6 years, we've converted 5 out of 7 of our area schools away from the oil fuel, to the pellet. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about that. We're really pleased with the local contractors and the and the suppliers for the fuel. So Green Street, Academy, the Putney Central School, the Guilford School, all of those have been converted, and we will be working on the Dummerston School very soon. So not too long, we'll be 100% biofuel based. That regenerative concept is really important to this group. So a couple of things there. There's a lot of work to be done in the lighting area. We did do the LED lighting, but I look forward to working with Efficiency Vermont, and I'm sure you've connected with those folks. They're top-notch engineers, and it's just a terrific resource. So I do look forward to working with you and the Energy Committee's efforts. And I don't want to forget one of our recent really significant impacts is sending about 1 million or a megawatt of power, in terms of the school systems. I helped negotiate the contract with the Wyndham Solid Waste solar array. So we've got most of our power. It's a net metering agreement, so it's not a direct feed, as you know, but most of the school system's power in the region is you can affiliate it with a solar array source, which has been not only a cost savings, but all part of this effort that you're supporting. So look forward to working with you. Thank you.
That's terrific. I really appreciate you giving me some of that detail. I connect with Tim Maciel and the Climate Crisis Task Force that WSESU has set up. That's been my point of contact most of all thus far. But I do also want to let you know there's a tremendous young person who's volunteering and active now on the Energy Committee, a 14-year-old at BUHS, a guy named Django Grace.
Yes.
And it's pretty amazing, some of the stuff he's got in mind. And I'm looking to try and support him and other young people becoming more involved in some of these processes in town government. So if there's a way to coordinate there, I'd love to be in touch. And I understand when I speak with Tim and other folks in the schools, just keeping the wheels on the bus is the name of the game. And to think creatively and how to do something new is almost impossible considering the conditions you're in. So my sympathies and my gratitude go out to everything you all are doing.
Thank you.
Rob, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, President-elect Phil. And I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for your great presentation. And you're very, I'm really inspired by your broad way of looking at sustainability. And it seems like you have your fingers in a lot of different pies, which is very exciting to see, that you can help all those places move forward more. We have been enjoying the trail network at Living Memorial Park with our disc golf course that we built there a few years ago. And I know how valuable it is to get out onto the trails and use those public trails as a resource for people. And at one point we were talking about helping with trail work around Winston Prouty and the Omega Optical area. So I hope that you think of the Rotarians as a potential source of help if you ever need any trail work done. There are some of us that would really enjoy doing that.
I'll definitely keep that in mind. Yeah, I work with Friends of the West River a lot, and Retreat Farm, and Winston Prouty. They all have needs. One of the things that I may work with Star over at Brooks Memorial Library on is just a community volunteering list, something to aggregate all the needs and all the people who'd be willing to step up, so that there's one place to go looking for that kind of stuff. So I'll definitely tie you all in if that starts to develop.
Great.
Any other questions or comments?
I can share one idea that I just want to plant with you guys. I know you've done gardening in the past. I know you take care of, is it the triangle or is it the piece that's in front of the municipal center? Can you, anybody help me out?
Sunrise Club takes care of the 2 bits on Park Place.
I'm sorry, did I just make a major faux pas?
No
Well,
problem.
just to say, you all are familiar with the work of Edible Brattleboro. I'm pretty sure they grow food in public places for the charitable food system. They've reached a point where they themselves cannot manage more gardens. They can give advice and guidance and help new gardens set up, but they're looking to move more towards a model where they have gardens that are sponsored by committed groups of volunteers to maintain, and part of the food could be for them, but part also is donated. And so if there was any interest in setting up some sort of community workplace garden where we would have people from different workplaces who would volunteer to help maintain a community garden, in part for themselves, but also the larger charitable food system, I'd love to help make that happen and give Edible Brat another form of impact in the community. So something to think about.
Well, we have about run out of time. Stephen,
Thank
thank you
you,
so
Stephen.
much. It was an awesome presentation. Really
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
the opportunity to talk and share. Yeah. And please, if anyone has questions afterwards, I'll leave my email in the chat.
Perfect. All right. And then we will adjourn the meeting.
Great to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.